Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This is episode number 14 with Ricky Meinke, somebody who is a perfect fit for this podcast, another great higher ed professional with a flair for the geeky and nerdy, which I always appreciate. So I really appreciated having Ricky on. He's just a really cool, thoughtful guy, really dedicated to this work, really takes it seriously. I just appreciate his point of view and all the great things that he shared. So we'll include everything that we talked about in the show notes that you can check out. And appreciate that his institution, Wentworth, up there in Boston, recently had a Geek Week, which I've highlighted a few that have happened in the past at a few different institutions on my website in the resources tab. So if you're curious to check out a few other examples, I'll link out to some tweets from Wentworth's Geek Week that they had this past fall. And then on my resources page on the website, there's also some other Geek Weeks there. So it certainly helps to have kind of that inspiration and encourage folks to start their own Geek Weeks to celebrate just being unabashedly enthusiastic about the things that we love. With all of that and without further ado, after this brief message from our sponsor, this is episode number 14 with Ricky Meinke. Hey there, listeners. It's an honor to have our good friends at SwiftKick be a sponsor of the podcast because I've seen their work firsthand and it's truly unlike any student leadership training I've experienced. They've been voted Best Student Leadership Program unprecedented 5 times, so you know they must be doing something right. As a bonus for our listeners, SwiftKick is giving a $500 discount off their normal speaking fee if you mention Higher Ed Geek when you contact them. I highly recommend their trainings for your campus as your students will be talking about it for months afterwards. It's really great stuff. Check them out, swiftcakehq.com to learn more and let them know I sent you. Now, back to the show. Yeah, winter break was good. It was a good kind of relaxing chill time. I guess pun intended. So yeah, like we thought we were going to do more, and it's I guess not really a long story, but we adopted a dog from our local shelter in October, and unbeknownst to us, she was pregnant. And so we started dealing with that like in November, and she gave birth then like at the end of the month of November. So we've been kind of fostering those puppies, getting them ready for adoption. So that did kind of change our holiday plans. We certainly made the most of it. And it's been, nice and frustrating at the same time, dealing with a bunch of puppies and kind of managing that. But, we're at least grateful.
Definitely got your money's worth of that dog purchase right there, though.
Right. Like a, buy one, get one.
Economically, it was a great purchase.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a good way to look at it, yeah. So yeah, we're at least, grateful we can get these puppies off to a good start and that our dog is, nice. Healthy and stuff. And, so yeah, it's just been an interesting journey. We did have other plans of what we were going to do over winter break, but at the very least we were able just to sleep in, get quality time. I caught up on, some shows and reading and just, gaming and those sort of things. So, I can't complain, but, did you get up to anything, interesting over your winter break?
Yeah. So I traveled So I traveled back down to New Jersey, New York, where my family's from. So just kind of spent it down there with them, and it was nice, more so relaxing. I was able to catch up with just, I had to do a lot of technology for my family, setting up their Fire Sticks or, whatever, things like that, right?
Right.
Removing pictures from phones and putting it onto the computer in a organized file or something, So just did a lot of that, just helping out the family, kind of get acquainted since my parents just moved up to New Jersey. And so just kind of helped out there and just relaxed for the most part, which was nice. So it felt like a long time, which is, I guess, a good thing.
Right, yeah. What part of New Jersey, because I went to grad school at Rutgers in New Brunswick, so I'm vaguely familiar with the state. My wife is from there, so her family's all over the place.
Yeah, and so my brother just moved he moved to Wayne, New Jersey. It's straight up the suburbs, pure burbs. And then my parents, they live in Clifton, New Jersey. It's around tri-state area, Passaic, all that stuff, Hoboken, kind of that area. And so that's where they're at, kind of still that tri-state area, so we could get into New York, since a lot of our family still lives over there too. So yeah, kind of the tri-state side of it.
Yeah, it's a good area. Cool. Well, we'll get more into kind of your background and everything here as we get started. Yeah, I mean, if you want to just start off the episode, just give an introduction of yourself, kind of the Cliff Notes version of kind of how you got to be where you are today in your professional journey.
Yeah. So how's it going, everyone? My name is Ricky Meinke. Currently I serve as the Assistant Director for the Center for Diversity and Social Justice Programs at Wentworth Institute of Technology in Boston. And so kind of how I got here was, I think, first for many, first discovering student affairs is an actual thing, a job that we could kind of pursue. And so that was at Florida State University where I was in my undergrad. And I think I kind of discovered student affairs just through some of my various positions within student activities and also orientation. I did orientation leader for 2 years, and it was just a great experience, and just kind of loved being able to help shape new incoming students' experiences because I felt I had a lot of mentors that looked out for me and did the same for me. So I really enjoyed kind of giving back to the incoming classes and just campus. And I saw that doing this professionally would be a really fun gig. And so I started looking at grad schools. And I think within that search, I also wanted to challenge myself of just kind of environment of which I was in. Florida is in the South. It has a lot of Southern elements, but it's still very much like the Northeast. A lot of people from New York, New Jersey, a lot of people, escaping the winter and things like that. And so I truly wanted to go to a place that was more deep into the South, right? Seeing more Southern culture. And so that's where I saw Louisiana State University as being a choice to do so. A new program, but very based in social justice and also very flexible. And so I was able to obtain an assistantship at LSU within their transfer student programs under first year experience. I really enjoyed working with our transfer students when I was at Florida State University and kind of looking at the transfer experience. And so I felt this role would be an easy way to kind of dive into that part, which at the time I felt, this was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago now, that I felt maybe transfer students weren't really being looked out for as much as we should. And so I used that position to really look at the transfer experience. And it was a great time. I was able to start new programs. I was lucky to work in an office of just 2 people. And so that kind of provided a lot of autonomy and just, whenever I came up with some ideas or, in these brainstorming sessions, it was things we were able to do because we didn't really have that built up structure within our office. Unfortunately, that assistantship got canceled as they canceled all assistantships within our first year experience office. I think Louisiana State University is a good school, but I think the environment, as in Louisiana, makes it very challenging for higher education. They're still going through a lot of budget crisis right now with university funding as it being the flagship state school. And so Louisiana is in a very tough and challenging spot. And so that trickled down to a lot of offices in terms of making kind of those fiscal decisions. And so I was kind of the last grad out of that office. And so that kind of gave me a search. I actually went on for maybe about 2-3 months not having an assistantship for the next upcoming year. And looking back, I'm thankful for that experience because I think it prepared me for what the job search was going to be like. So the job search was a little less stressful. But I was able to spend that time up here in Boston. I had my UMass assistantship with NOTA, and that was a great time. That really introduced me to the city of Boston and just living in a city in itself. I kind of spent my time in a lot of small college towns, so living in a city was an amazing time, and it really showed me kind of that lifestyle outside of work. I think sometimes in small college towns, when the university dominates the scene, we kind of get wrapped up in our job, and that becomes not just a 9 to 5, but kind of a 24/7 ordeal sometimes. And so I saw the work-life balance was a little more challenging in those areas, and so coming up to a city was great because I saw just the abundance of things that were happening outside of work and outside of just the university setting, and I loved it. And so I set my eyes on kind of living in a big city when it came to the job search, and lucky enough, I was able to obtain a position within kind of diversity work with the Center for Diversity up here in Boston. So that was nice. It complemented, as I said before, I lost my assistantship. I was able to get a second assistantship within the African American Cultural Center at LSU. And that being kind of my first position in multicultural affairs, it really opened me up to the field of multicultural affairs and diversity work and showed that that's where my passions really lied. And so I knew after kind of spending just 1 year there that that's where I wanted my job search to be. And so I was fortunate enough to have be able to get back up to Boston and kind of remain in the field of multicultural affairs. And that's where I am today at Wentworth. We're a brand new center here. We've been open for about maybe 1-2 years. My role and my supervisor's role as the director we're the first in these positions. And so it's been a good experience of just being able to come into a brand new center and kind of create that culture and create those new programs. And also maybe challenge a lot of areas of campus where diversity wasn't maybe the focus of a conversation or initiative before. So it's been a good time here so far.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment here. But I guess just circling back to your higher ed origin story. So, in your college experience, obviously, like you said, that's kind of where you got turned on to working in higher education, student affairs, and everything. So I guess anything like that you can think of skill-wise, or just your philosophy or mentors, connections, or anything like what do you feel like your college experience gave you personally and or professionally that you kind of have carried on with you now into your professional career?
Exactly. So I think originally when I started off, I viewed student affairs as really a customer based kind of field, right? I mean, just looking at it through the lens of orientation, a lot of it was customer service, and just being able to provide, families, parents, and students just one of the best experience possible. And so I think that's where I look through the lens of creating these moments for students that really just benefited their experience. I had, I call it like my single moment of, coming into college, going to a step show with our National Panhellenic Council and seeing a white member perform and really be a part of a community, be a part of an organization whose identity was not his own. And that really opened up my eyes to just the plethora of experiences I could have at Florida State University and how much I could learn. And I think that is what I started off with my student affairs kind of mentality, is that I want to provide these moments for students, whether it's myself or events or things I help with and support on campus that really change their entire lives at a university. And I think that's what kind of started me within the field. I wanted to make sure students had great experiences. I wanted to make sure I was a happy professional. But kind of as I developed my more professional lens, I saw that's not always the case. I think a lot of times I always saw learning outcomes and things of that nature from good experiences, right? I never really thought I would hold students accountable, right, or challenge them, or maybe sanction them, right, and see that side of student affairs as a possibility for learning outcomes for our students. And so, I think rainbows and butterflies was my lens before with student affairs, but seeing that's not always the best outcome for students. Sometimes their best experiences come from some of their biggest challenges, and maybe sometimes I need to provide that challenge or help facilitate them through their most challenging times. I never would think of a dean of students position being more that critical, only experiencing those 10% of student issues on campus, right? I saw, the dean of students position as something I wanted to become, right? Oh man, I would love kind of, being a dean of students, but now I'm seeing my role really changing and seeing, do I want to move up within the professional realm and maybe lose more student contact, or, do I want to stay in my position now, or, can I do more work of higher ed in the same regard? Do I want to look at more community-based versus just our singular school? And so I think my professional lens is broadened now to see a little more holistic experience. I'm no longer that, I'm still providing hopefully some good customer service for my students, but I'm seeing just how much more of a challenge it is to help students, making sure they're not just happy, but they're just prepared for the workforce, prepared for life after graduation and things like that. I could give them a great experience while they're here at college, but if they graduate without, a job or that next move for them, I think in the end of the day, I failed them, even if I gave them a great time at their university. So I think that is my next step is not just focusing while they're here at college, but making sure I'm preparing them for life after college as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's all good stuff. And yeah, I know I dabbled with sort of like conduct and sort of that sort of stuff in grad school, and I knew like that's not for me. Like I don't see myself ever doing that like as a full-time job, but it helped me to recognize the importance of it. It's important just as humans to kind of know that our behaviors have impacts on other people and sort of where those barriers are, and kind of just knowing that there's consequences and stuff for our actions and stuff, and having those learning moments where it's you're not trying to be punitive. It's educational moment, and
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, it certainly is a lot of that of just like if somebody is kind of in their bubble of their functional area, not really broadening their perspective, they can certainly lose out a lot on what a kind of a robust college experience is for a student, because they're going to touch a lot of offices and a lot of different areas and things. Right. So like their experience is going to be a lot more complex. So yeah, very cool stuff. And I guess, yeah, that brings us, to where you are now again.
Right.
So yeah, it's really interesting. You're really kind of shepherding and kind of trailblazing here at your institution. So like,
trying to.
Yeah, like I guess with that, like what do you enjoy most? And I guess what are some of those difficulties, maybe just to obviously highlight something very unique that I'm sure there are really good things and maybe some stuff that is a bit more difficult that you have to work through. So I guess maybe both sides of the coin there.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things I really enjoyed about my new role is just the autonomy. I'm lucky to have a supervisor who's giving me some good autonomy within my work, but just kind of that opportunity to create just newness. We're a brand new center, so that means all of our programs, all of our initiatives are brand new. We did have some previous programs that trickled into our office, like we're going on a social justice retreat later today, and so those are things that were carried down to us, but really the expectation was in our court. We weren't having any expectations given. I mean, our deans and whatnot, our supervisors, wanted to make sure we were successful in doing things. But in terms of how that exactly looked, we weren't really given any blueprint. And so we created that blueprint for our students. And it's been a phenomenal time from the programs from, say, our affinity months. Black History Month is coming up, Women's History Month right after that. Ramadan and kind of these events that we kind of have somewhat of a blueprint for, but we've started initiatives like our Women's Council that's starting up, our Men of Color initiative. We've started things that I think involve this podcast. We've done a Geek Week, right? And so we've really introduced the narrative of diversity into so many new areas of campus that I don't think we're there somewhat before, but now we have individuals that are advocating for them in their professional role, which has been very exciting. And so that in myself has just been a great time. When we first started off, I would say my first summer was the summer of 2016. Our center was quiet, to be honest. Students themselves didn't know, what our center was and what it did. I really think the words like diversity and social justice for incoming students, right, are pretty broad. They don't know exactly what it means fully just yet themselves. And so, our center was somewhat quiet as we were still kind of introducing ourselves around campus. But I'm very proud this past fall, it was never quiet in our center. Students were always in here hanging out and really seeing this as a space for them and a space to come and learn and kind of just be a part of a collective and a community that might have not been here before at Wentworth. And so it's really been great to kind of see this success after 1 year. This is my second spring, so I feel a little more confident. I think last spring I was still running around trying to figure out things, going on facilitating conference trips for my student organizations, booking tickets and still understanding policy and things of that nature. And so with this being my second spring, I'm very excited to what we could kind of accomplish. But I mean, along with that, I think there's also been some challenges, and I think the challenges really come in the place of more so discovering what was done in the past here at our institution and how that might not have been equitable to some of our student populations on campus. And maybe because since it's been something that has happened so many times and for so long, kind of really pushing against maybe the tradition or just the comfort people have within some processes. And so that's been different. And I think, sometimes just introducing conversations that weren't there before and making sure those conversations are valued. I mean, if we're introducing conversations of diversity into some areas, that means it could mean that diversity wasn't valued before, or just that there weren't individuals in that maybe committee or that session that had that type of focus or lens. And so I think sometimes we have to push back a little bit against university culture, which could be challenging. Asking questions, why aren't there any XYZ students involved, or why do we feel our women aren't involved as much in the program? And kind of seeing the heads turn a little bit, and then really kind of anticipating, is this next statement from this person going to be a good one or one that's going to brush me away, right? And I think I have that lens a little bit more. I think Wentworth does a really great job, but I think just having my origins, say at a school like Louisiana State University, where at times there would be a lot more challenges for our students of color, right? And that would be due not to just ignorance, but to racism sometimes. Our students had to deal with racism on an everyday basis at that university, just from the outside environment, from David Duke coming onto campus to maybe a professor at times, or just maybe events not getting approved. And that was the battle I had to face in my role from time to time. And so coming up to a university that, created a center of diversity just from proactive conversations, I think I still have that mentality sometimes. And so I think for me personally, I'd rather come into that conversation with that mentality, just so I'm prepared for it when it does arise, and not necessarily be surprised. I'd rather be surprised that people are doing a good job and supporting diversity, just because I feel a lot more prepared to combat kind of the bad things that we may experience in our work. So that's I would say has been the challenge at times, and I think just for two professionals, overseeing an entire university and a lot of these initiatives could also be a challenge. And so definitely that question around staffing and just being understaffed. And I think for myself, I come up with these ideas and I then may have to turn them away just because realistically, I might not be able to have the time and be able to put in the full effort to make sure that idea is successful. And so I would love to have a huge staff and be able to, make sure all these ideas come into fruition and be successful. But sometimes that can't be the actual reality. And so I think that's some of the challenges we face. Like I said before, as a new center, we've come up with a multitude of ideas, but the challenge then comes of figuring out which ideas have to go and move forward and which ones have to maybe wait a year or so or might not happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot there that I think I'm sure resonates with a lot of people. And just like you're saying, like being that advocate and feeling, on your part empowered to do that, but not trying to like antagonize people and,
Right.
like being, really punitive towards people. It's like, you're trying to just help the entire ecosystem be more inclusive. And that goes from just like students feeling like they have a place to hang out to, including things in syllabi, making sure there's representation in very prominent,
Right.
Like decision-making circles and stuff. So it's like, there's just all these little details, and it's like it's a tough job, but it's an important job, and it's just a consistent one. And certainly, like you said, there's like no shortage of things that you could do and the different ways that you can achieve it. So it's just like, kind of figuring out, I guess, like the strategy of it, because it's like, okay, we could come at this from any number of angles, and like, just what works out best, and sort of
so much.
like how do you want to deploy your resources?
I do have to say, we have received a lot of great support here at Wentworth. It has been very nice being at a university where we do have, I would say, like 95% of support from staff, from students, right? And so it's been great in that regard. We'll come up with a new initiative, and we'll have some faculty that'll be like, sign me up, I want to help out. And so it's been great seeing that. It was new. It was a surprise for me to see all that support because sometimes you have to pull strings just to get people to come to a session or to an event or to a program, whereas we haven't had that issue here just yet in some regards. So it's been nice. It's a little flip-flop of what I thought it would be.
Yeah. Well, because I think it's like you said, it's positive that a center like that was even created in the first place. Like a lot of places don't have a place explicitly sort of, focusing their attention on it, because it's like, it's something that deserves someone's full-time attention, not just a sort of like other duties as assigned or something. So then it's like, you are getting a positive response, because I think where obviously a lot of the difficulty of that work comes from is that it could be like it's constantly a battle. And I think at the very least, it's like, sometimes there's just difficult conversations that you have to have, and maybe you have to have them like repeatedly, but at the very least, like you said, it's like people are receptive, and it's just like, this kind of ripple outwards to where it's like, when you first started, it's like people didn't even know that you were there, but now people do, and now people are going to be more aware of you, and just kind of continually like kind of influencing the culture. And that takes time, it takes dedication, but it's it's important work to do, and it's good that they've got folks like you who sort of segueing to my next question, like you sort of like you're really immersed in this stuff, you kind of geek out about it, you're very kind of encouraged to keep at this work. So I guess I don't know if maybe it kind of bleeds in of things that you've geeked out about for a long time, or things that you're getting into now, like if there is sort of like a symbiotic relationship there or whatever. But I guess just to start out, like what are things, other than obviously like your work life, that you like, what are things that you geek out about personally, and like are they things that you did discover more recently, or things that you've like always been into?
So I think for me, the one thing I would say that I've geeked out on, right? I feel for me, I get a lot of topics in my mind that I'm like, wow, that is a really cool topic. But then I might not really research it as much because I like it just like I said, it maybe gets put on the back burner a little bit. But for the first time, I've this past I would say spring semester in the summer and currently I've really geeked out over the topic around demographic data and how do we collect that as universities and how does that kind of go into the many systems of which we pull data from, and emails to just student information and things of that nature. And so I'll give you a little more example because it's pretty broad. So we at Wentworth, we pull our demographic data from the Common App, right? Most universities would use, I would say, a generalized Common App. And when the demographic kind of question comes around, those selections are, I would say, somewhat limiting for a student's identity, right? We only have maybe a few selections of Asian American, Pacific Islander, Black African American, white Caucasian, Native American, right? These few selections students have might not really encompass their identity, right? And so for me, I saw how that trickled down into our work within the Center for Diversity is when we were doing a lot of targeted programming for our Arabic students on campus, that when I were to receive reports of demographic data from the institution, I would be able to see who are our students, right? Who are our Black students, right? So we could send out targeted emails of some sort, right? But I could not see who our Arabic students were. And within all of our systems, we did not have any indication if our students were Arabic or Middle Eastern of that sort, right? And I started to see a lot of our Arabic students that were involved in our center were actually denoted as white within their demographics, right? And so it really started to turn for me more so from email, right? At the start, I just wanted to be able to contact these students. But as I really started to geek out on this topic, seeing that we would never be able to see retention, GPAs, semesterly or overall, of our Arabic populations at our university. They're essentially a invisible population. But then I also started to see that our student groups also wouldn't identify with a lot of the things that are kind of offered on the Common App. If you look at our Asian American students, that is a very broad term that when you look at GPAs of, say, our Indian students, our Korean students, our Japanese students, our Chinese students, that GPA could be very different, right? But due to the way we collect on the Common App, we group these different populations together into a singular identity, which may not be helpful for us when we were looking at things like GPAs and whatnot. And so that really got me into how are we going to collect more detailed demographic data. And so we came up with the paw print. Here at Wentworth, we are the Wentworth Leopards. And so I thought the paw print was like a fitting term for us to have a more extensive demographic questionnaire. And we were lucky to have support from our orientation office to where this would be something offered during our welcome week that the entire freshman class would fill out and take. So some things on this demographic questionnaire, right? And so we have to do, I think, a lot of education around demographics for incoming students. These students are coming out of high school, and so they may never even thought about, their own personal identity, but what do terms like Latino mean, right? But also within some of those questions, right, we have Latino, Spanish, Hispanic, right? And sometimes we group together those questions into one line, but all those are three very different identities, right? And so we saw that some of these demographic questions was actually stripping students of their identity, right? And kind of already might be showing that their university isn't welcoming to their identity. We're just grouping them together, right? And that's kind of, not very empowering, and it slights the student. It already kind of, makes our students view the university in kind of an up, especially if their identity falls under the other category, right? It's not a very empowering selection choice for our students. And so we made sure to really create that more extensive, right? If you identify as Native American, right, let's have you also list maybe what tribe you're a part of to be more kind of empowered within that identity, right? Maybe around the Hispanic, Latino, and Spanish question, right, separating those questions. Also having an Arabic designation, because seeing that's not necessarily, stuck to one identity, it's more of a geocultural identity as well, right? But the biggest piece was we started to research and see that students are now, for the most part, identifying with a racial identity, right? This social construct of which we created ourselves, but more of a origin. When a student says they are Chinese, that is a physical place on this earth, right? That is a country, that is a geographical location, right? If a student says they are Haitian, right, that is a geographical location. That's not race. That is an origin. That is where maybe you yourself were born, right? Maybe your family, your grandparents have some sort of ancestral tie to that geographical location. I think it's a very American thing to identify ourselves first as a more of a racial category, and that doesn't give consideration to students who identify more on a geographical sense. So we started to offer on this sheet as well an origin, so students can identify as not just Asian American, but identify if they do, if a student unfortunately gets that question of what are you, they're going to say I am Chinese, I'm Japanese, right, or I'm Korean, I am Russian, right, and they may identify more than that versus white, Asian American, or black. And so we offered that as a secondary way for students to identify, because then that would allow us to see where are our subpopulations, and then maybe what are some of the dynamics of those subpopulations. Maybe we do see that our South students have great GPAs, but maybe our Lebanese students may not be doing as successful. And so kind of seeing how could we support our Lebanese students now, right? We can no longer, I think, move forward as a society with these more broader racial categories because they take away so many different races and so many students' different identities that they hold dear, and that's how they represent themselves. And so uh, it's something to where I'm not researching maybe how pivotal this is. I'm first trying to research if anyone else is doing it. And hopefully this podcast maybe gives someone that's doing it as well. But I have been to a multicultural conference, the Multicultural Institute that NASPA holds. I went to an assessment conference that our region held up here. And I didn't see that work being done, even when I try to ask some questions of, to professionals who've been in the field for a long time. I think we focus a lot on assessment and surveying student experience, but we kind of keep demographics as the same thing that the Common App uses, right? Those same 7 or 8 racial categories that we have for our students. And so, I've really just, before I dive into it, because personally, I don't want to get into this work and then I don't know, drop a blog post or something, and then someone be like, Ricky, I've been doing this for 10 years, something like that, right? And so I've been really just making sure this work hasn't been done just yet. And then now I've also kind of expanded all of my work, right? Before it was just making sure we could email students. Now it's really gone into retention and GPAs and things of that nature. But now also seeing just how does systems actually kind of view this as well, right? We use Banner, or if it's what's kind of kind of those presents, things of all these different systems we have in place at universities. Are they able to track demographic data within the system itself, right? I may have all this information, but if I can't put it in a Banner or these systems that our universities use, is it even worthwhile to do? And so kind of also seeing now all of these barriers that are in place of, now that we have this information, who could use it and who could actually put it into place to good use, right? I think, if we see a student of concern, seeing that demographic data is important. But on the flip side, I think this needs to be done very ethically. It needs to be done very carefully. At times, our universities, our students may not trust or just may not want to put their identities out there for their university to see and to use. And so we I think, also just need to be really careful how we collect this information. It's making sure it's the most comfortable time for a student, that the student is also educated in why are we using this information, why are why do we need this, and kind of what do these terms mean? Because I think the last thing I want to do is I want students to feel that they are empowered and that they can identify as such, but I also don't want students to feel that we're putting them into a box right when they get into the university, because some students may not want to identify in that way. And so just making sure we're taking a very ethical approach to this. And so we're treading carefully. We're being very patient. We are bringing a lot of student perspective into this project and into this initiative, and really continuing the conversation why this demographic data is important. And so we've been lucky to have an awesome institutional advancement office that helps with this. Because to be honest, survey building was not my forte. I never saw assessment as something that I wanted to dive into, but seeing how assessment, right, how this collection of data relates so much to my work now, I've been really geeking out about it and just really diving into it as much as possible. Because this has just been awesome, just to see what change we can make with this data just from a diversity office. And so that has been something I've geeked out in since like the springtime when I started to discover these things and some of these notions with my students. So all the way now, we've collected, it was pretty funny, Welcome Week maybe encompasses around 900 students. And I think with any survey, the expectation sometimes is that students aren't going to fill it out. I think that's an issue we have with a lot of our surveys going across campus is, we only get maybe 20 or 30% feedback from it, right? From maybe about 900 students at orientation Welcome Week, we got about like 800 responses. And so it was more than enough feedback and data that from the survey. And so we saw that it was successful, that students are filling it out. So now we have to kind of revamp it a little bit in some of the questions and things of that nature. We saw maybe students didn't really understand what, diversity or origin meant, right? Or geocultural, identities. And so we have to do a little more education around these students because they're essentially high school students. They may not be thinking in this lens just yet, this racial lens and racial category as much as we expect them to. And so we've really now seen the success of the survey, and so now we just need to improve it to make sure we see some more success in the data. And I think for the time being, I'm going to keep searching for individuals who have been doing work around demographic data or even just the lack thereof, because I really want to, if there isn't anyone doing such, right, really become an expert in this area.
That's very cool. So, yeah, I think... Yeah, obviously that's in true geek fashion, like nerd fashion. It's like just such a deep dive into, this seemingly simple thing, but very important thing. And like you said, you can pull a lot from that data that you get in to
right.
kind of better strategically achieve your goals. So, that's really, really awesome. And it's just, like I said, it's one of those things, it's like surprise yourself of just like, wow, I'm like getting into like, quantitative
right.
data and survey building and like, how do you ask a question and, it's
never thought I would do it. Like I said, I never geeked out about numbers or Excel sheets and charts and things like that. Luckily, I'm saying we have awesome co-op students, and I mean, being in technical school, I mean, you have to love numbers to be a student here. And so we've been able to have awesome co-op students that geek out, and I would say know how to geek out a little better than me in this area. And so I'm able to just receive the data and kind of the summaries, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I don't, because I have no idea how to put together an Excel sheet or, put this data and these ranges and all of that. That's not my area of expertise. And so it's been great to use also the tools of a technical school to accomplish some of these projects a little bit easier, because it wouldn't have happened if it was just me and an Excel sheet. It would not have happened.
Yeah. Well, then I guess on the other side, because that's like obviously positively contributing to the work you're doing with students every day, kind of doing that deep dive with sort of how you're pulling sort of that demographic data and everything. So I guess like what are you like reading, watching, listening to? Like what are those things that you're consuming, like the content? And is there anything I guess like if you're looking at certain things with a critical lens, or you kind of seek out certain types of content just for your own sort of kind of wholeness as a person?
Yeah, no, and so I think with working within diversity affairs, and diversity work, we're seeing a lot of, content, I think on a day-to-day basis, the work we do. So I think when I came into my professional job, I turned to, I started just reading more like, say, fictional books more, right? I was like, all right, I got to maybe take a little bit of a break from, the textbooks. And so I've been really just diving into like a ton of science fiction books, and shows and things of that nature, just to have it be just an escape from the work just for a quick second, and so I just finished up. I reread it because it was so good. I just finished up Seven Eves. It was a book about how the moon explodes and just what do we do after that and how do we survive. That was a great book, and so I just finished that up, and I'm glad that it's going to be to a movie. And then I've also started watching The Runaways on Hulu, which has been awesome. It's been great. Been a great show. Kind of being a short web series for the most part. The diversity of the cast, the perspectives involved. Seeing how they changed that comic book into a TV show was amazing. And I think I specifically enjoy kind of the geek and nerd content outside of work a little bit because it loops back into the work I'm doing here at my school. I would safely say most students at my institution right now are geeks or nerds themselves. There isn't a day students aren't, coding outside in our lobbies or bringing in a drone to program in our center or playing video games or reading comic books themselves. And so it's been really great to work at a university where kind of there's tons of geeks, tons of nerds just everywhere. Because I'm able to come in and connect with students based off, the Marvel movies that I watch, that semester, or the comic books that I'm reading, the Funko Pop dolls that I have in my office, right? It's a way for students to come in and be like, oh, you like Iron Man or, Black Panther or, Storm or things of that. Like, that has been a way for me to connect with students. And so, it's kind of more of a fun hobby for me on the side, but it's really paid off a little bit. I'm glad I played all of those hours of League of Legends because I'm now advising the League of Legends club on our campus, right? And so it's been a way to connect with students, which I didn't think of such before. More of these hobbies that I had were more just personal things that I would do in my life before. But when I started working here at Wentworth, I saw just kind of how I could kind of tie it into my work. And we did with we started a Geek Week, Dustin, which was really cool. It was a week of just geeky events and topics that also included the conversations around diversity. And so I don't have any articles or things that I'm currently reading, but I would say I'm always researching just what topics around diversity are occurring within video games and comic books and movies, because I think that could be very powerful for our students here who are kind of in both worlds, who are nerds and geeks themselves, who are big fans of comic books, right? And so when they see Riri Williams as, the first African-American woman Iron Man, that's huge. And so that's something our center promotes because we know it will kind of be profound to our students, right? Seeing the diversity of some movies that are coming out, right? Seeing diversity within video games and things of that nature that are coming out. Those are things that we promote in our center because we know it resonates with our students. Our Geek Week was a lot of fun. We talked about, how are women represented in video games? How are LGBTQ identity represented in video games, right? And then also we had, things like video game championships or virtual reality, right? Labs and stuff. So things like that have been an exciting feature of my life in terms of what I'm reading. In terms of comic books, I just got done with the Ultimates run, which I think were really good. That's been a great storyline to read. I've been mostly reading a lot of Marvel comics on my spare time. I've on a budget, so I had to kind of shorten down the pull list to just like Iron Man, Black Panther, and then I'm also watching some Image comics, and so like Invincible, which is ending soon, and things of that nature. And so like having to keep the comics on a little bit of a down low, but more so, still being up to date with the culture a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's like, nowadays it's just like is also like digital comics or whatever. It's like if you want to like go back and read the entire run of any comic, like it's there. So yeah, it's like don't put so much pressure on it. So it's like, oh, I gotta have this huge like pull list. It's like, you'll be able to read it if you want to. Like, there's certain things. It's like, okay, let me like really streamline to the things that I really want to keep up with week to week. And actually, I need to watch the season finale of Runaways.
I was so disappointed, not in the episode, but I didn't know it was the season finale. Like when I clicked on the links for the episode, right? Nothing ever told me this was the season finale. All I saw was just episode 10, and I was like, And then I looked, at the end of every series, I always look at like the preview for the next episode, and there wasn't any. I was like, what? And then I saw like season 2 will come out soon, and I was like, oh man, I kind of, so it was good. I appreciated it. And then I've been somewhat interested in Marvel's Agents of Shield, and kind of this like stuck in space storyline that they got going on. It's been somewhat interesting. So that has also been something I've been keeping up to date with watching TV shows. And then I would say maybe some Westworld. I mean, I know the season 1 ended a good while back, but that was a really fun series to kind of geek out over a little bit. So I'm going to start rewatching it because I'm hoping that season 2 is coming out pretty soon or in the near future. So
yeah, I think it should be. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, good stuff. We'll link out stuff in the show notes. And yeah, I guess if you have anything just to share about the Geek Week, it really always warms my heart seeing folks doing cool stuff like that, because that was like a huge thing for me, like affirming, like when we did Rutgers Geek Week for a couple of years, and just like I was just like, okay, yeah, this is my stuff, this is my jam,
right.
And really just awesome. Continuing to kind of carry on that mantle and celebrating, like, because it's like, yeah, I think some people, it's like some people really identify and kind of take that title seriously, like that's just kind of part of their personality, and other people, like we all geek out about something, but some people it's just like that is just who they are, they just have that personality and they really celebrate that part of themselves and kind of connect with people about it. So it's like having a week where it's just like, yeah, like those things of pop culture that we really like and technology, and just having kind of like serious discussions about our like entertainment and that kind of stuff. Like, I always kind of joke that way. It's like I take my entertainment very seriously. Like I'm always gonna like kind of critique it and just like look at it through a certain lens, and just like so it's really cool that you're able to do something like that on your campus there.
It was funny because having a geek week, you would think like, all right, comic books, pop culture, movies, things of that nature, but being at a tech school, like there are some top tier geeks. Like we could, I'm like, all right, we'll do a program around comic books, but then for next year I'm like, we could do like a hackathon, create a program that does X, Y, and Z, right? Or I was even, considering kind of live action quests and things of that sort. Like, maybe you scan a QR code and then it brings you to a website, and within the script of the website, there's another clue that takes you to this, right? Like, I think at a tech school, we could get really intense because these students, the way they understand numbers and programs and things like that is vast. And so I could geek out and make a geek week that involves things like that here at this school. And so for me, I was like, that's really serious. And I kind of don't understand half of this stuff. So it was also a challenge because I'm like, I'm not a geek in what you're a geek of. I'm a geek of just like comic books or video games and things like that. So it really also changed my view of, what I thought was a geek and a nerd. I mean, we even had a geeks versus nerd debate because, those two terms kind of are thrown around in the same, same sentence sometimes, when really they could be meaning different things. Like our students, some identified as a nerd and some identified as a geek. I had students coming up being like, why isn't there a nerd week, Ricky? And I'm like, I thought it was all the same, but I guess it's different, so we had some fun conversations around that too. But it was very surprising how easy it was to include diversity within a lot of these geeky topics. And I guess it was also empowering for our audience to let people know that these are some of the programs that we could do. People don't have to expect us to always do diversity programs, right? Or, social justice programs in that regard. Sometimes, our students want to identify and express themselves through these geeky avenues, who are students from diverse backgrounds and identities. And so I think, not that it wasn't taken seriously, but that a fun and simple concept like a Geek Week could actually be really impactful and be a really strong week of programs for our students. And so I think we had to face kind of also, just kind of the stereotype of being a geek or a nerd and how that's kind of maybe brushed aside sometimes, to really seeing like, hey, this week was really good, and it's something that could keep improving and being successful for students.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I guess then just to wrap up this episode, we'll end as we always do. Just anything kind of optimistically, anything that you're looking forward to in your job, in your life, in the world, anything, that's just got you kind of looking forward to the future and excited.
Yeah, so I think the one thing I am looking forward to is our, I would say more so our end of the semester. We're starting to do things like recognitions within our office, and this semester is our first semester of having our Wentworth Women's Council. And so with that is just so much possibility of what could be done. And so I'm just looking forward to, honestly, a second spring semester to where I feel a lot more confident, professional, especially here in my institution where I know somewhat most of the ins and outs now. It's looking to be successful this semester, not having that learning curve like I did. And I think also enjoying winter, Dustin, that's not, that might seem like a simple thing, but for me, being south, like moving up here to New England, just having a huge snowstorm just like a week and a half ago, it was rough. I know I've already been through one winter, but I think this one I'm a little more prepared. I actually have like a warm coat, right? With gloves and hats and scarves and things like that. Before I had like a North Face jacket that was like more of a Florida North Face jacket. Like it didn't keep me warm at all. So I think I'm looking forward to like finally enjoying wintertime and not being freezing cold all the time. And so those two things, just being successful this semester and just kind of experiencing my second winter up here as a resident of New England and Massachusetts. I think those are the things I see on the horizon that excites me the most.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's definitely the difference. Like in New England, like there's cool parts of the seasonality, versus just like thinking like, oh, like winter hibernation. Like I'm not going to do anything.
Yes.
It's like, no, there's cool stuff to do in the winter too. Yeah. You
That's
just have
how
to, like, embrace it. Yeah. Get that warm coat. Yeah. Yeah.
And so now I'm finally embracing it. And I mean, along with this year, I'll be honest, in terms of geeky things, we have a lot of awesome movies coming out, anywhere from Black Panther to Avengers to is Deadpool 2 coming out this year?
I think. Yeah,
so just a plethora of some good movies coming out that I'm excited for. So we just bought some tickets for our students because in our Black History Month we're going to go see Black Panther. So we just bought a bunch of tickets for students, and I'm just excited for how successful that movie is going to be. So I can't wait. I can't wait for February.
Yeah, that's my hope is that like Black Panther is the Wonder Woman of 2018. Like it's just this movie where everybody's like, "Oh right, cool!" Like it's like a pleasant surprise. Like I think there's a lot of good hype going into it. And just kind of mixing things up a little bit of just not your typical sort of leading person and just like a very diverse cast and just like it's a refreshing like kind of setting and. I mean, I'm really excited for it too. Yeah, just something that's like, it's like a month away. Like we're getting really close. So
right. No, I was pleasantly surprised at how close it's going to probably come up, and I feel like next week I'm going to go see it in theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, we will end it there. Really appreciate your time, Ricky, and all the good stuff that you shared, and just have a good rest of your day and a good weekend coming up here.
Yeah, it's you too. Thank you so much for having me. This was a cool experience. I appreciate kind of the effort and kind of making sure we had a good time to schedule out for this podcast. I appreciate you.
This podcast is a proud member of the Connect EDU podcast network, bringing together diverse voices and thoughtful discussions to the higher ed community. Check us out online at connectedu.network or find us on Twitter at connectedupod. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.